Welcome to episode 7 of the Adapted Ambitions podcast. We are going to be talking about how to know if you should stay or go. One of the most common questions I get asked is, listen, should I stay or should I go from my current position? Although many people will say that they're unhappy in their current jobs, they don't actually know what the root cause of their unhappiness is. And when you don't know what the root cause of the unhappiness is, it's difficult to make a good decision. So today I'm going to be walking you through the Clarity Audit. It's a framework that I use for my advisory clients when they're trying to figure out whether the challenges they're facing at work are fixable or whether, it's time to move on. This isn't about motivation. It's not about following your passion. It's about getting clear on what's actually wrong and what to do about it and making practical steps on what the next move should be. I'm Offonry, and this is the Adapted Ambitions podcast. Let's look at some data before we dive in. So in the US, 64% of employees say that they're unsatisfied at work. But when you ask them why, most can't really articulate why. They just say, I'm not happy. I'm not happy here. In the UK, 51% of professionals say that they've thought about leaving their jobs within the past year, but only about 23% actually did. And why is that? It's because they can't really figure out if the problem is the job, the company, the sector they're in, how they work, or just them. Here's the thing. 40% of people who leave their jobs end up in similar situations within 18 months. And the problem is because they don't necessarily diagnose the real problem. They just move. They feel that the problem is their current manager or their current company. And so they just move to a similar situation. So before you update your LinkedIn, before you start applying, before you start doing anything, you need to audit what's actually going on. And here's how to do that using my Clarity Audit framework. Step 1. You need to actually diagnose the problem and figure out what's actually wrong. So most people say, I'm unhappy at work. Okay, but why? You need to get specific because unhappy could mean a million different things. Let's talk about the 7 most common root causes of unhappiness that I see often. Number 1 is the work itself. Perhaps you're bored with the work. You've outgrown it. It's not challenging anymore. You just don't enjoy solving the problems that you need to solve in your role. The second root cause I often see is your manager. Perhaps your dynamics with your manager are just off. You don't think that they're a great manager. They might be a micromanager, not give you the support you need or the advocacy that you need or give you the autonomy that you need. The third is the team. Perhaps, you're in an environment where there's a toxic culture, there's a lack of collaboration, people don't respect one another, people try to stamp over one another in order to sort of get credit for work. The fourth is a lack of growth opportunities. So it might be that there are no promotional pathways available to you and no learning opportunities. And so you kind of feel stuck doing the same thing year in, year out. Number 5 is usually salary and compensation. So perhaps you feel underpaid relative to the market or relative to your value. Perhaps your compensation hasn't really changed much or grown at the pace that you see in the industry. 6 is scope. So perhaps your role is narrow, not broad enough, or misaligned with what it is that you actually want to do. And 7, now, this is the one that oftentimes people don't really delve into, but is really, really important, which is values misalignment. If the company's priorities and way of operating doesn't really match who you are or match how you want to work anymore, that is sufficient reason, 1, to be unhappy, and 2, to consider a move. So your job right now is to figure out which one it is for you or which combination it is for you. What is the actual real issue? Sit down, write it down, get specific. I'm happy is not specific enough, but being able to say, my manager doesn't advocate for me and I haven't learned anything new in the past 18 months. That's specific. And so you need to ask yourself, what is the real problem here? Not the symptom, but you need to get down to the root cause. Step 2 is asking yourself if this is fixable. And I'll often say to people to do that with 3 questions. So the first is the thing that's wrong within your control to change? So if it's your manager, can you change teams? If it's the work, can you take on different projects? If it's the comp, can you negotiate? If it's yes and it's fixable, then fantastic. If it's not fixable, fine. Let's move on to the next question. Is your company actually growing? Because if headcount is shrinking and if no promotions are happening and budgets are frozen and you're working on the same thing year in, year out, then it doesn't really matter how good you are. There is no upward mobility. You're stuck. The opportunity cost of being in that situation is that you don't evolve, your skill sets don't evolve, and you're less and less valuable on the market as a result. Growth companies create opportunities, but stagnant companies clearly don't. The third question you need to ask yourself is, do you have a good manager who's able to advocate for you? Good manager doesn't necessarily just mean that they're nice, but it means that they're able to advocate for you and they actually have influence. You can have a manager that you get on very well with, but they have zero influence in being able to kind of help you, navigate your career. So if your manager is good in the sense that they can advocate for you and they have influence, then they can help you fix whatever problem you have, right? And if no, then clearly that will be an uphill battle for you. When you look at step 2, is the problem fixable? And you ask yourself these 3 questions. If the answers are mostly no, then maybe it's time to go. And if the answers are mostly yes, then maybe it's worth trying to fix the situation in your current role right now before considering a move. Step 3, the state plan. Let's talk about how you fix things internally if you decide that that's what you should be doing. So the first thing I would advocate for is that you go have a conversation with your manager as soon as possible. And this isn't about, a vague I'm feeling stuck conversation, but you need to be specific and also you need to be forward thinking. So you want to talk about your career path. You want to talk about what you're looking for specifically, whether that's more scope, more responsibility, more comp, more growth, whatever it is. You need to be able to articulate the specifics of what it is that you're looking for. And you want to be prepared going into this meeting. So you want to have clear timelines, you want to have metrics, and you want to come out with a set plan of action, right? Or at least a follow-up where you can discuss a specific plan of action. Action 2 is you want to set a deadline, and this deadline is probably for yourself because there's only so much you can control with the company or with your manager. And so, for example, you can say to yourself, listen, in 6 months, if I don't see progress and be clear about what progress looks like, then perhaps I'll start exploring an external opportunity. This isn't for you to discuss with your manager necessarily. You're the best judge of whether you should convey that information to your manager or not, but this is for yourself, and this is for yourself to kind of hold yourself accountable to not staying in your current role for longer than you need to if you've decided that you want to give us some time and try to fix things for a certain period of time. Action number 3 is you need to build your exit plan in parallel. I see people do this all the time where they'll kind of speak to their boss and keep waiting for their boss to kind of take action. The reality is that you need to take action as well, because you need to always put yourself in a position where you're making an informed decision based on where the market is. And part of what will help inform your decision is understanding what the market looks like for someone like yourself. So if you need to update your LinkedIn, reconnect with your network, continue to build your network, start thinking about what's next, go to conferences if you have to, go to, webinars, masterminds, read books, do what you need to do to kind of keep yourself up to date in the market. Even if you stay, that's leverage for you, right? But if nothing changes, say in the next 6 months, then at least you're in a position where you're ready to move. Step number 4, this is the go plan. If you decide to go, let's talk about how you leave strategically. If you decide that the situation in your current role is not fixable and you definitely want to leave, first thing is please don't rage quit. I know that things can be frustrating, but if you can, try not to burn bridges. It's just never worth it. Leave as professionally as you can and give proper notice, document your work, hand things off cleanly, do things to the best of your ability. I know that, some of us fantasize about kind of just leaving, just leaving things in the lurch, but it's not worth it, right? Action 2, I've talked about this earlier. As much as you can, start your search before you resign. It's easier to get a job when you have a job, funnily enough, than when you don't have one. You can afford to be picky. You know that you don't have to worry about paying your bills. oftentimes I'll see people quit and then they start looking and then they get desperate and then they end up in a worse situation that they started off with. It's not worth it. Look, while you still have your job, and so that you don't have to operate from a place of panic. Action 3 is figure out what you're moving towards. I talked about this in a previous podcast episode. Don't just focus on what you're leaving, focus on what you're moving towards. So use the framework from the previous episode about trying to really get to the root of what you actually want and get clear on that before you start applying. Because if you don't know what you're moving towards, then you'll end up in a worse situation than the situation you're trying to leave. Action 4. So give yourself a timeline, right? And give yourself a realistic timeline. So it might be that you're giving yourself 3 to 6 months to find a new position, or you're giving yourself a year. If nothing materializes, then within the time frame that you've given yourself, then no problem. You can absolutely reassess. But this helps to prevent panic decisions. The final action I'd say for this step is that you actually want to create time in your daily or weekly schedule to work on this pivot, right? So I often see people saying, oh yeah, I want to leave my job this year. And then they don't make time for it. And then another year goes by and then you're like, oh my gosh, I hate this job. And then you're in it for another year. So the reality is that you're going to have to make decisions about, making time in your schedule, however busy you might be be able to, work towards your pivot, whether that is researching a new type of job or industry, researching a company, applying for jobs, prepping for interviews, whatever it might be, right? You actually want to put time specifically towards this. So we're assuming that you're in a situation where, you might not like the job you're doing, but you're able to stay for a period until you kind of figure out what the next move is. Now, there are instances where it makes sense to leave your company immediately, right? To leave your current job immediately. So for example, if your mental or physical health is suffering, if you're having panic attacks, you can't sleep, perhaps you're drinking or using other substances to try to help you cope, then no job is worth your health. Another scenario is, if you're in an abusive or toxic environment and your manager's gaslighting you or throwing things or screaming at you, you hear some, news about this happening on trading floors, then, it's really not worth it. You don't really owe a company or a manager anything if you're in that kind of situation. Another scenario where it makes sense to kind of leave immediately is if the company is clearly failing. So if layoffs are happening left, right, and center, if the leadership is jumping ship and the funding is drying up, then don't wait for the inevitable. Don't wait to be the last group of people that's looking for a position, because all the best positions would have been kind of captured by then. So just be proactive and start looking. And if you've tried everything in your power to fix things and nothing is changing, if you've had conversations after conversations, you've set boundaries, you've asked for what you need, but nothing seems to be improving, then, maybe it's time to move on, right? You've got a long career. We're working for longer periods than at any point in history. So don't sacrifice your well-being for a job that doesn't really value you. So as always, I want to leave you with a few key action points from this week's episode. First is, if you haven't already, run the Clarity Audit. Use the framework I've shared in this episode. Sit down for 30 minutes, no distractions. If you need to light a candle, write down what's actually wrong. Not just I'm happy, but get specific. Get down to the root cause. Is it the work? Is it the manager? Is it the team? Is it the compensation? Is it the growth? Do you feel that there is something outside of your current role or opportunity that is calling you forth? I know that was my case. And, if you're clear on all of this, then it really helps you make a quality decision. Second action point is run the 3-question test. Is it fixable? Is the company growing? And do I have a manager who wants to and is able to advocate for me? Be honest with this, right? Because the answers will really help you decide if it's time to go or if you should stay. And then finally, make a plan. So if you are staying, schedule the conversation with your manager this week and set yourself a 6-month deadline. If you are going, update your LinkedIn today. Reach out to 3 people in your network this week just to have a chat, right? No agendas, just to have a chat, and then start your search. Don't just sit in discomfort. Make a decision and take action. If you want help running this audit, if you want someone to walk through it with you, help you diagnose what's actually wrong and build your stay plan or your exit plan, I work one-on-one with senior people as well as with technical professionals on exactly this. I'll help you figure out the root cause. We'll stress test whether it's fixable, and I'll help you build your plan. So you can learn more about this at offonry.com. And if you want frameworks like this, market intelligence, career strategy that actually works, then you can join my newsletter at offonry.com. You'll also get my career decision scorecard there as well. So that's it for this episode. Next week, I am going to be talking about the career moves that you're not considering and you should be. But until then, I'm Offonry. This is Adapted Ambitions, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.